Wrapping up your week on a Friday here on GMFB. Tweet the show, hashtag GMFB, and go vote for the best running back. Saquon,
right.
Zeke Elliott, it is up to you. And you can tell us ways that we should attack Schrager with the eggs later.
Hit me. How about gracefully, just delicately? We're doing a thing for cancer where you're cracking eggs. All three of these guys have done it.
Yes.
I will have an egg cracked on my head to the great pleasure of much of the audience.
Don't you believe in like a finale, a grand finale, though?
Sure, it'll be grand.
I'm going to give yours a
Will
historical
Selva.
NFL treatment.
Out in the newsroom in LA. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Kate. Appreciate that. Well, the Nick Foles Shrine on the set in New York has long been retired. It may have relocated to the office of Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry, or maybe he'll start a new one. Who knows? But speaking of starting, Foles now the man in Duval after signing a 4-year, $88 million deal with Jacksonville. He'll look to bring the same big game Nick to the table, whether he's a backup or the unquestioned starter under center.
For me, I want to be the same person if I'm the number 3. I want to be the same person if I'm the number 1. Even if you come in here and you're the so-called starter, like, you still have to earn the guy's trust. And that starts with being here, getting to know him, working with him, and going in on this practice field and in the weight room, in the meeting rooms, day in and day out, and getting to know him to where you can build that, that love and that brotherhood in there. So, it's the same no matter what. It was the same when I went into Kansas City as a backup. It was the same when I came here as a starter. It's just, get to know my teammates, build those relationships so we can go out there and, it's a brotherhood.
Well, Jacksonville signing their top overall pick as Josh Allen inking his rookie deal Thursday. He said, quote, "I'm just ready to make a name for myself in the National Football League." Allen sat out OTAs as he deals with a bruised knee suffered on Tuesday. Allen says he's good, as head coach Doug Marrone wasn't concerned either. Patriots players and approximately 25 season ticket holders joining the Massachusetts Military Heroes Fund to participate in a Memorial Day service project. They planted 37,000 flags to celebrate all the brave women and men from Massachusetts who lost their lives defending our country. And while we all celebrate this Memorial Day weekend, let's not forget the reason for the holiday as we remember all the fallen heroes. So that is obviously an important reminder there and a great gesture there by the Patriots, as well as we send it back to you guys in studio. Peter.
Tremendous stuff, Will, and thank you to the Patriots. That was awesome as well. We're now joined by one of the most respected journalists in all of sports media. He's been covering the NFL for Newsday for 30 years. He's a 2-time winner of the New York State Sports Writer of the Year Award, and he's the president of the Pro Football Writers of America. He's also the author of a great new book, Guts and Genius, the story of 3 unlikely coaches who came to dominate the NFL in the 80s. Guys, it's our pleasure. Please welcome Hall of Fame voter Bob Glauber.
Oh, yeah! When you're reading that stuff, who's that?
It's you, my friend.
Peter.
Take it. Before we dig into this book, you've covered the Giants and Jets for 30 years for Newsday. This offseason with Odell and Le'Veon Bell. Yesterday we saw Landon Collins come on here and call out Dave Gettleman as a liar. Big picture-wise, how has this offseason been for the New York media?
Collectively crazy. And I don't think I've ever seen it like this. Both teams, just so much stuff going on. The Odell trade, Mike McCagney getting fired, the drafting of Daniel Jones early at 6 and not Josh Allen instead. It's been crazy. So very active, but a lot of interest. And I think both teams are in an interesting transition spot, but potentially in an upward mode. I think the Jets earlier because they got their quarterback, and the Giants maybe eventually, if Daniel Jones pans out, it's going to be an interesting team.
I think it's going to be a fun ride with Gase. I love the Gase press conference, spectator. So hold on.
He was fighting back.
And we haven't even played a game yet.
No. There have been 2 contentious Adam Gase press conferences in the last 3 weeks. We're in May.
You're here for it.
Isn't that hilarious?
That was stuff like,
Where were you sitting yesterday? Were you front row for this? Or were you?
I was the second row.
But you're watching it all from a bird's eye view.
Yeah, I'm right there. And I was like, well, this guy's punching back.
So you have this encyclopedic memory of everything that's gone on with the Jets and the Giants, what the book is about. Does this remind you of anything that's ever happened, or is this uncharted territory in covering this team?
It's a little bit uncharted territory, but man, we've been through so many iterations with the Jets. The Bill Belichick, leaving the team was, that doesn't get any more crazy than that, and that's 20 years ago. So the craziness level is pretty high, you got to say.
Unbelievable.
Now, the whole league was affected by this annual spring meeting down in Florida earlier this week. It wrapped up. There were a lot of changes and announcements on the field and off the field. What was the one highlight for you, the thing that stuck out the most?
I think the one thing was about the interference, the change, and not reviewing everything the last 2 minutes automatically, making it a coach's challenge. And I think that's a really good streamlining of that rule because the coaches themselves were concerned about stoppages. My editor asked me that night, he said, are you sure you mean the coaches?
Yeah.
It's not the fans and the owners. No, it's the coaches. You don't want that stoppages. So the challenge system is the way to go. And I think that's a normal thing, with the whole system. So I think it's going to work out okay. Now, unintended consequences, yes. There's going to be some craziness. There will be. But I think if the coaches have a chance to review things, a call or a non-call, I think that's a good thing.
All right, Bob, let's get back to this book, Guts and Genius. So your story, it focuses on three coaches, really. It's Bill Parcells, Joe Gibbs, and Bill Walsh. And I want to focus on Walsh a little bit because there's a story in here that caught my attention. Something about a pet duck.
Yeah.
And so I need to know what happened and how that kind of shaped one of the greatest minds in coaching history.
It's a pretty amazing moment. Bill Walsh's son told me this story, that Bill Walsh, when he was about 11 years old, lived in Los Angeles, had a pet duck. And he would tend to the duck every day. Feed it, pet it, take care of it. And one day he came home, the duck wasn't there. And Bill Walsh asked his parents, where's the duck? He's walking around and they don't say anything. Goes back inside and smells something cooking.
What?
Dinner.
Oh, man.
This is terrible for a kid.
Yeah.
And it's the duck. The father was an abusive father. Sure. So Bill Walsh grew up in it was like horrifying.
Yeah.
So Craig Walsh, Bill's son, is explaining to me, he says, at that moment, something happened to my father. Something happened, just concrete formed in his stomach, that he just realized, all right, these people aren't going to help me. When you're 11 years old, think about that.
That's messed up.
And he was a very lonely child. And kind of kept to himself in a lot of ways, but that moment it was an epiphany in a way that I'm gonna have to do everything myself. So not an uplifting Father's Day type story, but really, and all three of these guys, there's fatherhood that runs through it, and Walsh not in a good way. It helped him in a way.
I giggled because I thought that was it was an accident.
No,
but that's what I thought.
It was a form of abuse.
Absolutely.
You're saying
Absolutely
Psychological. I mean,
yes, it was a horrible moment. Wow. Craig Walsh is telling me this. We spoke a dozen times during the course of the book. Craig is a very good person and helped me with kind of finding out who his father is. And this might have been in our 10th conversation. He goes, I got a story to tell. This hasn't been written, and I don't know if you probably don't need to use it. He's telling me the story. I'm like getting chills, and I'm almost crying.
Yeah.
Because but it was a very important moment in trying to crystallize, who Bill Walsh. Very complicated man. Of the three coaches, by far the most complicated.
Wow.
But brilliance and genius comes out in different ways, and
it comes from different things.
It does. It does.
all right, you've got these three: Parcells, Gibbs, and Walsh. They were all in that golden era of the 1980s. Yeah. You covered the NFL back then. When we look at the NFL 100, and you're a historian of the game, how do you put those three names in really the hierarchy of coaching in football history?
Well, I got to tell you, and this is not just because I wrote a book on it, Peter, but I think that the 80s in a lot of ways was the best decade of football for this reason. The sport had matured. The X's and O's had matured. These three coaches really got it and collectively dominated. They won Super Bowls and they traded back and forth. And the rivalries were terrific. They were years-long rivalries.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you get rivalries. The NFL's great.
Sure.
And you get rivalries that are year to year. They're not long-standing because
free agency, salary cap?
Absolutely. Yeah. That changed the whole thing. So you can't keep teams together. But those three coaches were brilliant in their own right. All three Hall of Famers. You throw Belichick in there, he came of age in that decade. That really set the stage for what we're seeing today because the coaching trees, I was blown away by this. Since Walsh won his first Super Bowl in '81, 31 of the next 38 Super Bowls were won by either Walsh, Gibbs, or Parcells, or Walsh-Parcells coaching tree members.
That's amazing.
That's 80%.
It's ridiculous.
80%.
Right.
It's absurd.
It's
But it's true. And
Godfathers.
I had to look at those stats like 10 times just to make sure.
No feeling.
But and they really kind of defined what the game was then. And what's the most prevalent offense in today's football? The West Coast offense.
Yeah.
Oh, Bill Walsh. You know?
I can't wait to read this.
Timeless.
It is timeless, and it did form the basis for what we see in today's NFL.
It's awesome. That's what great coaching is, timeless.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the Giants and the Jets, there's a lot going on. We could
news.
be
Oh, sure, I'll be
at
back.
the table. But for now, pick up Guts and Genius, the story of 3 unlikely coaches who came to dominate the NFL in what could be the best decade of the NFL, to your understanding, and maybe mine after I read this. The 80s. Father's Day, by the way.
Great Father's Day gift.
Fatherhood is a theme in this book. This is a perfect gift for you dads out there. Bob, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, Bob. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Great job,
Thank you very much.
Up next, maybe you can stick around for the Adam Gase discussion we're going to.
Hey.
You were there in the second row. You tried clarifying.